we're not only developing the science, we are also part of moving this forward and taking it outside of the lab. And so I think when researchers really understand what their role is, no, you don't need to understand all the commercialization process, but you need to understand your specific role in it and how you can collaborate and actually help move the mission forward. Then they're really excited.
Welcome to the Transfer Files, inside the world of federal innovation. This is your insider's look at how federal laboratories bring groundbreaking technologies to market. I'm your host, Andrea Nelson. In every episode, we'll bring you insights and expertise from throughout the world of tech transfer. Today, we're talking about the Catalyst Coaching Program. It's Oak Ridge National Laboratory's award-winning initiative that's helping early to mid-career researchers move their breakthroughs from the lab to the marketplace. Catalyst empowers scientists to connect their innovations to the private sector through building confidence, communication skills, and strategic awareness to help them engage industry partners and make real-world impact. Joining me are three people who've helped shape and grow this program. Jennifer Caldwell at Oak Ridge National Lab, Susan Ochs, also at Oak Ridge National Lab, and Angelique Adams of Angelique Adams Media Solutions. Together, they'll talk about how Catalyst began, what makes it so effective, and why programs like this are key to turning research into results. Let's get into it. Could you all introduce yourselves for me?
So thank you for hosting us today. I'm Jennifer Caldwell, Jen Caldwell at Oak Ridge National Lab, and I'm the Director of Technology Transfer.
Hi, Andrea. I'm Susan Ochs. I am the Engagements Program Manager here at the lab. I've been at Oak Ridge going on 10 years, but in the DOE complex about 35. One advantage that my career has really brought is I've sat at every seat at the table. I've been a business owner, I've been a Fed, I've been on the outside, I've been on the inside. And so my role in connecting all these pieces, it has been to my advantage to have in all those different seats to come to this and bring that expertise to this capacity.
And I'm Angelique Adams. I'm CEO of Angelique Adams Media Solutions, which is a leadership training consultancy for PhD scientists and engineers. And I am also the director of the Leadership in Engineering and Entrepreneurship program at the Tickle College of Engineering at the University of Tennessee.
Excellent. And you three have come together through the development of the Safari program. So we're going to talk about how that all came to be. If Jen, could you start and tell us where the idea from that came from and how it started to get legs?
Yes. So being at a national lab, many times there's a need to sort of break down barriers that people perceive being, behind a virtual fence that many national labs historically have had to reside. And so one of the ways to do that was, coming up with solutions on how do we physically connect to these potential entrepreneurs or investors or private sector partners that can then deploy and commercialize technologies that are created at the national labs. And the Department of Energy, who, owns our national laboratories, saw this as also a common goal that they had. And they had a program called Practices to Accelerate Commercialization of Technologies. And that was this idea was a natural fit with that program. So the Department of Energy funded Oak Ridge National Laboratory to start up a program that we conceived, to be able to connect with the private sector. And so one of the, Oak Ridge National Lab is the largest multidisciplinary lab for the Office of Science at the Department of Energy. So we have so many different topics. It's hard to have that public definition of what we do and what innovations are coming out that are commercial opportunities. So this was really important for this particular lab. And so we developed a program that, we would have the tech transfer office be a concierge to the private sector and be able to host them and make those direct connections to our researchers and innovators for them to explore and look at the lab as, embarking on a safari to look at opportunities.
The Safari program actually won an FLC award earlier this year in 2025. So congratulations. And tell me a little more about that.
Well, the FLC award was given for innovation, and we so appreciate it because that's really what this was. We needed a new solution. We needed a new approach. And this allowed us, OTC and their support of our program allowed us to move forward with this and I think have the impact that the Federal Laboratory Consortium is really looking for. And we're very grateful for that. We also won 2 TTWG awards, Technology Transfer Working Group, with the same recognition that industry has changed, how we engage with industry has changed, and we really need to be at the front end of those engagements to have impact. And so we very much appreciate the recognition for that because it has been a very creative process, but we're happy with the results that we're seeing. In addition to the awards and, the impacts in terms that we've mentioned in terms of licenses and agreements, and now we have this list of 24 entrepreneurs who are working with on a daily basis. What really cannot be undersold is the impact of those relationships. It's really relationships. These programs are very relationship driven. If somebody's going to come and invest in a technology and stay with it, you're going to build a relationship, not only with the researcher, but with the commercialization side, your licensing team. It is a whole dynamic. So these enhanced communications are so great for relationship building. And one funny little aside this to me is just delightful because it just shows an impact. We just went through the Energy I-Core submittal process, and a bunch of our participants in the program applied. But what was really nice is in 2 cases, we needed industry mentors. And I reached right back to these Safari entrepreneurs and said, hey, would you be willing to be an industry mentor to these teams submitting for NGR credit? And you know what? They both said yes. And so those kinds of relationships matter over time. And so I would see, the awards are great impacts, the licenses are great impacts, but the relationships will go forward.
From the initial idea, tell me about how Safari evolved and led to another innovative program, Catalyst.
After it was funded, the world went through some challenges with COVID. And then when we came back to, be on site and wanting to start to reconnect again with the private sector, we found that the world had changed and the ability to do things virtually and use time and resources more direct for accomplishing specific conversations and not just going to explore when you can do those things virtually and not necessarily in person. We found that we needed to evolve our program as well. And so then we worked with the Department of Energy to be able to recast this program in now this new era of business that we were facing. And then I can go into sort of that evolution if you'd like to as well. So we worked with, as I mentioned, the Department of Energy, and we now fed them a new idea. This idea was really came about with leaning on our local innovation ecosystem and, learning about resources we had here that might be able to allow us to, accomplish this evolution and be able to connect with industry. And we, began to come up with a plan with Angelique Adams and her business where we said, if we can just do a better job of now communicating virtually, having our researchers concisely explain their innovation in a way that can be received by the private sector, that would really enable us to use this virtual platform. And we came up with a plan with Angelique, and then we presented that to the Department of Energy, and we have really great collaborations with them. So Kristen Hellier at at the time we had to sort of, pitch this new idea of moving the project in a different direction. And she's very collaborative, understood, the creative solutions we were coming up with. And that really set the stage for transferring the Safari program to something called Catalyst that we have. And that's really catalyzing our researchers to be able to take their science and put it into a form that can be communicated quickly and easily over a virtual platform. And even today, it's been recognized by the Department of Energy and the Office of Technology Commercialization as being something that's really effective. The current director of the office, Anthony Puglisi, recently awarded us a tech transfer award for this program. So they're very pleased with what we decided to do. And I'm excited to turn it over to the people that made it work and learn about Catalyst.
And I'm so curious if I could pause on Catalyst for a minute, because communicating, for the researchers to communicate to a different audience, there's inherently a challenge of shifting perspectives and talking in somebody else's language. And then to do that virtually where there's no back and forth conversation, how does Catalyst navigate that challenge?
That's exactly what we needed to address. And, in all reality, when we started this, pre this program, some of our initial engagements were kind of a disaster. Like it did not work. And we weren't prepared. We didn't speak the language. We didn't speak it the right way. To be honest, there's no shortage of brilliant science here. There's no shortage of people, but it's to get that bridge in place so that we were communicating, as Jen said, in the mechanism the industry wanted and in the language that they speak. That was where we were really struggling. So we needed help, and to be fair, we have a lot of communication programs here at the lab. Communication, we are huge on it. Our HR offers so many things. So it's not that this wasn't a new idea, but it was transformational in that it wasn't science for the sake of science. It was science for the sake of getting out to industry. And that's where we really needed the skills of Angelique, and what she brought to this program were pretty fantastic. And we are also now, we've gone through 3 cohorts of this. We're seeing the results, that the proof is really in the pudding on this one. I would say one other thing that is really key to this is that, the industry is tech agnostic. They don't care where they get their tech from. They want a technological solution, and we may have it, but it's not their mission to get to the labs, but it is our mission to get out to the entrepreneurs. It is our mission to get these technologies into the marketplace. So it's not their burden to speak our language. It's our burden is to speak theirs. And that is really, I think, the challenge that we undertook in this process. And that is really important, because the researchers, not all of our researchers are industry leading. A lot of our researchers are in basic science and want to work here. But the researchers that are at that edge and want to move our technologies forward, this is how it's going to work going forward. This is the state of the industry. These are the skills we need to have. And so reducing this to practice and going through these 3 cohorts that we had has been very effective for us to meet our mission.
And I would add that one of the part of the recasting and the benefit that we had of being able to work with Angelique was that she's able to not only speak in the right language, which is a really important thing that Susan mentioned, but also to talk about the elements that matter to industry. And so she has a whole program that teases that out, the value proposition, the next steps, those kind of things, but in the right terms that fits what industry is looking at. Because, in a way they're scanning. And so if you don't hit the right topics, you might be a great communicator, but without the right topics, you're not hitting the sweet spot of what they're scanning for.
And one other piece I would add to that really is why this worked. These are very small cohorts. We've managed this, roughly, 5 to 10 people at a time. And the reason for that is, excellence is idiosyncratic. Each individual researcher has a tech, and they're communicating their tech it has to be their voice. And what Angelique is really good at is not only is understanding the science, but understanding the person. So when we take this and that person is empowered and engaged, and Angelique can flesh that out, that excellence comes forward in the proper language and with their passion, with their expertise, with their understanding. And that is absolutely fire, because then you see it in their eyes when they know they're being understood. And like when that connection is made, it is so obvious. And so I guess to me, that part of it, getting to the idiosyncratic nature, and Angelique is just a master at it. That is where the power is. And so I think, harvesting out at the lab, the researchers who want to excel in this space and who really want these extra skills, they're not skills that you get when you're going to get your PhD in, chemistry or, bio, whatever. But these are skills that are needed if you're going to be successful in the marketplace. And so it has been, you have to, what we've been able to pick is a lot of researchers who have the intellectual property, who will impact the marketplace if we can get it out there. And so, what's nice is the researchers that I've participated very much have been willing to have that beginner's mind to come in and say, you know what, these are skills I do not have. And if I'm going to be successful going forward, I need them. And so it's you have to have the degree of humility to come into this and we have a lot of experts. Our people are just experts in everything they do, but they have to come into this and say, yeah, I need help in this area. And Angelique is masterful at pulling that excellence forward. And you can just see the transformation. And we've actually had opportunities in these 3 cohorts to see that skills, even, it's not enough for us to reduce this down to, wow, they got a 6-minute thing and we did it internally and it was great. No, it is only great if that actually goes into the marketplace and it is transformational in our technology moving forward. So now we've had enough time to see that happen, and the impacts are significant. And I think as we continue to evolve these cohorts and who comes in and what the skills they have, and connecting them even farther and farther to use those skills in industry, the returns back to the taxpayer will just continue to grow exponentially.
So, Angelique, how do you do it?
Wow, that was a lot. So I want to start by saying that, when Jen came to me with this challenge of, really wanting to basically get the researchers communicating out, as opposed to maybe inviting industry and entrepreneurs in, I immediately recognized the challenge. So I was in industry myself for over 20 years in research, and was a chief innovation officer for a global company. And so I have had this challenge myself within my own teams, leading teams of researchers and having challenges speaking within our own internal management or with our board, or trying to bring industry collaborators to our research, or even customers. And so the kernel of the challenge that Jen was talking about was something that was very familiar to me. And in fact, I had developed training for my own teams when I was in industry to help them overcome this challenge. And so I thought, okay, I think I can help you. And from there, we collaboratively put together a program that would take this communication training and helping researchers to understand, okay, you need to focus on the problem that you're solving, and you need to strip out all the jargon, and you need to, the basic things that we all know of, taking that and turning that into something that would actually fit in a national lab setting as opposed to a corporate setting. And I've also done this in an educational setting, and collaboratively working together to do that. And so there's a couple of components that I want to make sure we really touch on. From my standpoint, it's the basics of the training. It's also the empathy about how decision makers are actually evaluating technology. So I have developed technology myself. I have evaluated technology and invested in it myself. I have, been the one to pitch the technology. So I've sat in all of these seats. And so I have a clear understanding of the way decision makers are actually thinking about investing in a technology to bring to market inside of their own industries. And I can bring that point of view to the researchers, but I've also been a researcher myself. And so I think there's like two sides to the empathy and credibility. On the one hand, because I was a researcher and because I've had this experience, the researchers are more inclined to listen to me and sort of say, oh yeah, she knows what she's talking about. She gets them, but she also gets us and understands like how much of a lift this really is in terms of getting outside of your comfort zone. I mean, the way to speak to an executive about the problem that you're solving and the impact that you're going to have is so different from our PhD theses and how we've been trained to, have all the details correct and, show all the data, that it really is this leap outside of the comfort zone. And so I can bring both of those kind of different perspectives to this challenge. And so we started really with this training. And then what I really loved about what ORNL did is they did a couple of things. They are very intentional about who they select to be in the program. And so they're starting from day one with impact. I want researchers who have the technologies that can have a big impact. They're close to being ready to have an impact. And they see this as a leadership skills development opportunity for them. And so we're also picking people that we see as having, leadership skills and have development opportunities both inside of the lab and in the community. And then the other thing that I really love about the way we collaboratively design this is actually at the end. They said, we believe in you, but we also need you to get this right. We're going to have a capstone event. We're going to have a graduation, and we're going to invite your boss, your boss's boss, DOE representatives. Oh, and by the way, industry leaders who might actually be interested in this technology, they're coming to your graduation. And so what that does is that turns that from, we've all been to professional development trainings where, we get the workbook, we sit through it. It basically goes in one ear and right out the other, right? Because there were no stakes involved in our actual adoption and implementation of the materials. And so ORNL said, no, this is really important. It's important for you. It's important for us. And so being really intentional about who they put in and being really intentional about how they end it, I think has really been a significant portion to the actual program and the impact that it has had. And then in terms of sort of design of the program, right? So there's training. I think it's unique, in terms of how I teach it, because I start from where the researchers are. So I say, let's just start with your typical presentation and the content that you would normally present, and then let's transform it almost line by line in some cases into two different types of content. One is just something that you can just talk about. No visuals, no slides, nothing, just in hallway conversations. You're at a conference and somebody walks up to you and says, hey, can you tell me more about this? You're confident in being able to talk about it in the problems that you're solving from an industry standpoint, but also confident in how to direct them back to the lab and the partnerships team. Like, you don't need to be an expert in how the labyrinth of, licensing and partnerships inside of a national laboratory organization. You don't need to be an expert in that, but you do need to know how to connect somebody who's interested to the people who are the experts in that. And so helping researchers feel confident that they can do this and then bring interest back to the organization has been really important. And then the second form of communication is sort of the standard, what we would call a pitch. You have your slides, you have a time limit, but if you think about a typical research presentation, they're spending all of the time talking about their technology. And in our presentation, they get 1 out of their 7 slides is talking about the technology. The rest of it's talking about the problem they're solving, how they're better than the other solutions that are out there, and where they are, and what they're looking for in terms of a collaboration and a call to action about how to actually take next steps and move these conversations forward. And I think that is another really important piece to this. It's helping the researchers to see we are actually part of this collaboration and these relationships that the lab is trying to build with potential collaborators. We're not only developing the science, we are also part of moving this forward and taking it outside of the lab. And so I think when researchers really understand what their role is, no, you don't need to understand all the commercialization process, but you need to understand your specific role in it and how you can collaborate and actually help move the mission forward. Then they're really excited. And I see them really taking that on and seeing these as skills also that can help them inside of their work. In fact, in our last cohort, we had one of the participants say, okay, you just showed us how to do this decision maker sort of talking points. I have a meeting with an associate lab director later this week. Can I use the same framework for that? Yeah, 100% can. Let's flesh that out. And so they see it as, not only helping my technology get out of the lab, this is going to help me kind of grow in a leadership development standpoint. Another aspect of our collaboration was how they brought in their commercialization managers and other stakeholders to actually participate in the program, which was really important so they could bring their insights and the frustrations that they have directly to the researchers so they could understand how things work. But that also allowed me to then create a set of tools that were highly customized to ORNL in terms of how to make the presentations, how to link things back to the other stakeholders in the lab. And so that allowed for us to come up with a really customized tool set. So there's the training that I brought in, there's the empathy about what I know about how industry works, then there's the empathy about how this specific organization deals with the commercialization, what they're seeing in their network based on their stakeholders, and all of those together, we could put together both the training, but then also the materials that the researchers use to develop their presentations. And I could leave those with the lab so that they now have them and can continue to use them over time. So all of those pieces together, I think that the last piece I'll mention is just the one-on-one coaching. And I think this speaks to what Susan was talking about. In the program as they've designed it, there's an opportunity for me to spend one-on-one time with each of the researchers. And that's really where the transformation happens. That's where we really focus on. It's often a lot of just overcoming some of the fear of getting outside your comfort zone. If you think about, a researcher who has all of this international credibility on some of these technical, results and these metrics, and I'm saying, you know what, we're not even going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this other thing, and they're sort of like, but I don't know how to show up when I can't be the world's renowned expert in this thing. And so, I handle them with care because I've been there and it's a challenge. And so we get to do that in the one-on-one time. And that I think is where you see them coming out, actually being happy and thrilled to talk about their work in a new way and taking on, yes, you can show up in this way too and be recognized for it.
How can people learn more about the framework that you use?
Absolutely. So on my website, drangeliqueadams.com/insights, I have a 15-point checklist that anybody can take a look at. And it really lays out how I help researchers transition from a technical presentation to an industry-focused presentation. And so that's a great place to start to, figure out kind of where you might need to dial things in.
And I'm definitely hearing between what you all three have said, that idea of someone with a student's heart and openness to being a beginner again. And also, if I were to take maybe some free tips away from what you were just saying, Angelique, I'm hearing that people need to, that a key part of it is really showing the bigger picture and making it easy for your audience to connect the dots. Is that, in very large terms, what some of it boils down to?
100%, Andrea. That's absolutely the case, and really just sort of understanding one, your audience in general. So this is sort of a general tool. I think oftentimes we don't stop to think who's going to be listening to what we're talking about, and just doing a really quick analysis of, okay, are they experts like me? Are they in the meetings I'm typically in, or are they not? And even just that sort of quick check-in can really help you to determine, okay, if they're not in my normal meetings, I need to get rid of the jargon, at least get rid of the acronyms. Okay. At least get rid of the acronyms. That's your first step. Okay. Just define your acronyms. That's like the first step. And then, I mean, you could go from there, but yeah, it really does start with audience awareness and just doing a quick check-in. And then, I think, with tools, there's lots of tools out there. Even with AI, you can even, come up with some simple analogies to help describe sort of what you're working on. We do a lot of that to really help. Okay, if I'm working in a non-expert, if I'm speaking to a non-expert audience, how might I approach them? And just exactly as you say, Andrea, just really trying to frame things in a way that they would understand.
Beautiful. And from 3 cohorts that there have been so far, are there any particular stories that stand out that we could highlight here?
I'd love to. And I'll kick it off, and then these two can fill in any spaces. It's funny you should add that, because I was thinking that through. I want to go back to our first cohort, because really then you see the impact of OTC. And so if you go back to our first cohort, Michelle, and I did ask if I could use her name, but Michelle Kidder was in that cohort. And I will tell you, she ate it up. And she's loaded with IP. She's one of our very gifted researchers. And she was actually in the real original Safari program. She went through our coaching program, but then she also connected with one of the entrepreneurs who had entered into the Safari engagement program. It ended up with a license. Michelle then turned around and because OTC had allowed a degree of tech maturation funding, she was able to actually help them mature that technology and get it into the marketplace. But it's not only that. Once you learn this process, Michelle has then gone on to go after TCF funding with 2 additional, or 4, maybe 4 industry partners. She then just 2 months ago won our largest TCF award at the laboratory and is moving. So she's now going to even do a deeper dive with technology with these industry partners. But it is that ability to communicate effectively with the industry that makes all the difference. It puts the train on the track. She would be, kind of my cohort example 1. If you think about cohort example 2, we broadened that a little bit to not only include researchers with IP, but maybe researchers in charge of an entire program. So in that particular case, we did another thing. We took a researcher and their business manager. So we had Sandra DeVerne and Jeff Cornett in the radiopharmaceutical space. Sandra had some brilliant technology, and we're still moving that forward. But the 2 of them came together, and through that process, that slide deck that Angelique talked about, that slide deck, once they galvanized their message, they took that on the road. We just hosted in August a radiopharmaceutical workshop here at the lab that would have never happened had those 2 not consolidated their message to move it into the marketplace. So we had big pharma, venture capitalists, the whole suite happened here in August that it really grew out of this initiative and those 2 participating in the program together. And the third impact, one I'd like to highlight from the 3rd cohort, we took it, we're evolving each one of these, but on the 3rd cohort, we not only looked at researchers with IP, but researchers with IP in our critical mission areas. So the 3rd cohort had a quantum networking and a quantum sensing participant. I got to tell you, like day 1, when they made their initial pitches to Angelique, I don't even know what language they were speaking. I understood none of it. But by week 8, it was brilliant. It was crafted so brilliantly. But to Angelique's point, giving a final presentation here at the lab is not the point. Well, the point is to get it into industry. Well, they both had that opportunity because we participated in a quantum networking event in Nashville that very next week, and those two came and delivered their messages. It was absolutely ice. It was clear, crystal, beautiful messaging to the point that now the state of Tennessee is considering a huge quantum investment because those two were able to, and we had another, our ALD was participating as well, but those two messages because they came so clear when we're able to articulate it to a room full of venture capitalists, educators, it made all the difference in that networking and sensing story going forward with complete confidence. So, it's one thing to do a program, but it really only works if it helps them get the train on the track, and it has. So I guess those are, if I went cohort by cohort, just as examples, but I could break down each person, critical materials and AI and all of these areas. We are just, once you give a researcher these skills, they use them. They're going to take them places, which has just been fun to see.
And if I could add to what Susan had mapped out for us as successes that we've seen over time, one of the nice things that I want to highlight is how a program like this that's focused on connecting, so connecting with entrepreneurs, connecting with industry, and having the researcher being able to communicate, that really has enabled us to leverage not only this program, but many of the other Department of Energy programs for commercialization. You heard a term called TCF. So that's a Technology Commercialization Fund. So, Department of Energy allocates $35 million a year about to the 17 national laboratories to be able to collaborate with industry to technically to de-risk the technology in order to move it to the marketplace, or at least into the private sector business plan. Having a program like this that's not only able to communicate, but to make those initial connections now provides projects for these other programs. We have voucher programs that come from the Department of Energy. We have a Department of Energy I-Corps program that's very similar to the National Science Foundation, NSF I-Corps. The teams that are understanding their value proposition with Angelique's program many times move on to the I-Corps program to do customer discovery. And then once they do their customer discovery and understand the value proposition from that original step with us under Catalyst, they then move on to apply to a technology commercialization fund grant. And so you can see how you can start to link these things. And that's not only powerful for us at Oak Ridge National Lab, but that's also very critical to what DOE is trying to do when they roll out these programs. If they can leverage each program to be synergistic with the others, it has a greater impact than just the additive of the individuals. So that's another great unanticipated effect that we have seen as being impactful from Catalyst.
That's totally true. We've seen people. We had our very first cohort roll straight from this into the I-Corps program because we were in. I was like, hey, you all should. So once you know people who want to speak this language, that is part of my job, is to connect them to these opportunities. So in our very first cohort, we had two participants, Syed Islam and Nick Regorich. They rolled through this, and then they applied and were accepted right into I-Corps, and it was an absolutely brilliant transition, which then puts them into, when they came looking for a TCF submittal, they had multiple partners that were interested in participating, but they ended up with some pretty significant follow-on funding for their technology. So Jen is totally correct that it is the art. This is one part, but if this tool can get you to connect with that overarching arc that DOE OTC is looking for, it's a win for everybody.
Yeah. I love to see a rising tide lifts all boats, and it's so concrete here.
True.
Mm-hmm.
It's been fun to participate in. It's been really delightful to watch and just to see. Once they get it, they really get it.
So now what's next for the program? When does the next cohort start? What should people know?
So our FY26 program is probably going to run across this spring. We're in the process of and gathering people and participants, and we're putting that cohort together. We're pretty selective about, the skills and the IP that people bring to it, but we are looking to do another cohort in the spring of FY26.
Beautiful. And if people are interested in finding out more, where should they reach out?
If you want to work with, if you're an entrepreneur or you want to work with any of the technologies that we have put through this program or any other technologies, you could reach out to myself or Jen. If you are interested in, engaging in a program like this at other laboratories or other opportunities or programmatically, you could reach out directly to Angelique, because she could help, establish something like this, help you establish it, run it in a variety of capacities. So either direction.
Thank you so much. We'll be sure to link to the resources you mentioned and your LinkedIn pages in the episode notes on the streaming platforms and on the episode page at federallabs.org. Thank you again, Jennifer Caldwell, Susan Ochs, and Angelique Adams. And congratulations on building a program whose impact really ripples out across the federal labs and the private sector. Now for something new. We're excited to introduce a new monthly segment, the FLC Update with Paul Zielinski. Each month, Paul, the FLC's executive director, will give us a snapshot of what's happening at the FLC and across federal tech transfer, new policies, program updates, and the big picture trends you'll want to know about. It's a great way to stay current and connected to what's shaping our community. So, Paul, first of all, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Really happy to be here. And a big shout out to all of our veterans out there on Veterans Day. Thank you for your service. Definitely appreciate it. I will throw in, go Army. I'm an Army vet. So really, really proud of everybody out there that's done their service to their country, and really appreciate all the work that you've done.
Thank you. Happy Veterans Day. And thank you for your service, Paul, and to all the veterans out there. Now, Paul, there's plenty to talk about. So can you tell us what's going on right now with the FLC?
Sure. Well, I think the big thing, obviously, is we have our lapse in appropriations. That's really having a lot of impacts across all of government in all sorts of different ways and places. The FLC itself is still open. We are open for business. We are operating. We do a lot of outreach to our external partners, trying to connect them back with government, and that is continuing throughout the lab. So we're very happy to still reach out to the community, make sure that the different businesses that we're really trying to attract to really commercialize the federal technologies. We're still operating. We're still here for you. And we really want to make sure that that message is out there so that we can keep some of these things going. So when we do reopen, really we can get going again. It is interesting in our community, though. It's really a mixed bag. There's a lot of agencies that are actually still open, despite the fact that everybody's not necessarily receiving their paycheck. But there are agencies that are operating under different carryover funds. If it was Know Your Money, some of the appropriations don't actually end on October 1st. Some folks are open because it's just essential services within their agency. So it is kind of a mixed bag of who is in and who is not. But we're looking forward to everybody being back on board again.
And what has the FLC been doing in terms of outreach under the circumstances?
Well, so it's an interesting thing with Congress, of course. A lot of this is, of course, the shutdown and all of these things are something that Congress is dealing with. We, the FLC, are not allowed to lobby. We do not lobby Congress, so we can't do that. However, we can let them know about the importance of our mission and about tech transfer and what it is we do and how important that is to accomplishing the mission of each and every agency where we have this function. So one of the things that we actually can do is we actually produce an annual report. So it's one of those things that's actually required in the statute that sets up the FLC, that we are supposed to deliver annually to the leads in Congress and to the president a report on the activities of the consortium. So this year's a little special compared to previous years. We've done this report obviously every year since the FLC started its rounds in 1986, officially under the Federal Tech Transfer Act. But this year, what we're doing, because there's so many new faces and new people involved, is we're sending it out much more broadly than we have in the past. So in addition to the usual people that we send it to, the heads of each of the big committees and so forth in Congress, we're really doing a pretty broad mailing across Congress to try to get as many people knowledgeable about what tech transfer is and what we bring to the table, how important it is to the economy. We're also sending it, we send it to the president every year, but we're also trying to send it, well, we are sending it to every cabinet official. So all of the new incoming cabinet officials have gotten the report, as well as sort of that next level down, if you will. So we're trying to target the political appointee class of people, really just, again, communicate what we know, what we've done. So it's the 2024 annual report that we've just sent out. Great report. It is available on the website, by the way. Sort of summarizes all the different activities of FLC over the year. But the great thing about this, it actually, we've actually won awards for this report from different media contests in terms of a printed report. So it's a great report. It's got a lot of infographics, if you will, because, it's not a lot of words anymore. It's a lot more of like splashy info stuff to try to communicate that message. And again, we're trying to get that word out super broadly just to let people know. One thing we realized over the last year is just, there's a huge changeover, obviously at the political level. That happens every time there's a new administration. But also we've seen a lot of the buyouts, this DRP and the Vero VSIP and all these other acronyms that people throw around. But a lot of people have left. And so we're really trying to make sure we're communicating to the people coming in all of the all the different things that are going on. And again, the importance of tech transfer. A good example is that we actually have agency representatives within FLC. They're the senior person from each of our agencies that participate, and half of those have actually turned over in the last year, which honestly is very rare. I would say in the last 5 years, probably like 2 or 3 maybe have changed. But in this case, we've actually turned over a good bit, like a dozen people. So it is, there's times are changing, but we are trying to get the word out about the great work that happens in tech transfer, really the work that you do in the community.
And with the shutdown and all the uncertainty, what's happening with some of the upcoming deadlines at the FLC?
Yeah, we have a couple really big things that we do every year. So unfortunately, there are near this time of year, just based on when our national meeting is. I mean, our national meeting, I will give a quick plug for that. We still plan to be in person in May in Seattle. That was the plan last year. And of course, there was a shutdown of government travel last year. And so we had to shift to virtual. We don't really expect that this year. We'll see how the CR turns out. We'll see how the budget turns out. But we are currently planning to be May 12th through 14th in Seattle with an active national meeting in person. Now, with that, of course, we are currently in our call for sessions. And that is open. And we will extend that period. We do have to judge all the different submissions, and then we have to put together an agenda and open registration. And we really need to get the sessions done before registration opens so people know what they're registering for. So we are looking at extending that. It's going to be a little bit tight as we get into the end of the year there, and hopefully we get open soon. The other big thing, of course, also tagged to the national meeting is our awards program. So, of course, we do our awards at the national meeting. It is a big event. It is a big deal, and we're really happy to see it. I love walking into labs and seeing an FLC trophy sitting right there in the lobby of the laboratory. It's really great to see those things. But the awards program is on now, so we actually have the call for awards that is open at the moment. And again, we'll have to see what we're going to do with the closing date. We're sure to extend it some based on the just on the shutdown and the ability for everybody to write and submit the awards. Again, we have to go through a judging process. We have to get the information out. We have to put together the awards book and things. This all takes some time. So it's going to be, we'll have to just evaluate how long these periods are going to be. So if you are listening, I would encourage you to think about those things. We'll extend it, but it's hard to say at this point. No one knows when this shutdown is going to end. So it's really hard to tell you what the dates are going to be for submission.
Great. Thank you. And on a brighter note, we've got some new things happening at FLC. So can you tell us about those?
Sure. We're really excited about a couple new items that we've got. We've had FLC Business for quite some time. And if you haven't seen FLC Business, it is our tool for industry. It is the database that we pull in information from every agency that's out there. Everywhere we can pull information, we pull in what's available for licensing. We also have a unique piece of, labs, facilities, and equipment that describes what the labs are, where they are. So we have this information that's been available, and it's really been, it's really something that's well used. I mean, industry comes in and can use it, and you can just do your own search. So we love that tool. One of the things we've been adding, though, we were asked to add a little bit more on maybe some marketing help. So we've actually added to our month, as a lot of you know, the Digest newsletter comes out every other week or every 2 weeks. So we've actually added a monthly feature into that, which we're calling our marketplace. And the idea behind the marketplace really is, I mean, honestly, we pull it out of FLC business, but we try to highlight different technical areas and do a rundown of what are some of the technologies available for licensing in some specific searches. So yeah, you could do it, and hopefully people can come in and check FLC business, but this is our chance to put it in print. Maybe people don't want to go in there, but want to kind of pull them into the process. So we're going to do it for them. We're going to put it up there. It's available on the website. And we're thrilled to have that there as just another way to sort of promote the technologies that are available from our labs. So the other thing that we're really excited about is actually a program that we've been offering over the last year, really, which is on support tools to tech transfer offices. So if you're a member laboratory and you click up under that members section at the top right-hand portion of our website, you will see something about tools. Now, we've broadcasted this. We've tried to get the word out. And to be honest with you, it's one of those things where people kind of, the reaction is like, really? And you say, yeah, really. We bought some tools. They're available to the member laboratories. It does market research and, some information on like, the go, no-go decision on patent, once you get an invention disclosure. And you, again, like I get is the, really? It's like, yeah, really, really. We bought some tools and there's seats available for member labs. So we've been doing this as a pilot. The board has voted to do this again. So we are going to extend it. Now, we're in a little bit of a transition period on this. Obviously, the fiscal year ended and we're shifted into the new fiscal year. And of course, NIST mostly is closed down from doing procurement actions for us due to the shutdown, lapse in appropriations. And so we've got a problem. So we're going to have to be, so I would invite you to check those out in the near term. They're still available right now. And we're going to do some webinars to introduce them a little bit more, but we're going to be transitioning. There will be a formal solicitation. We're going to do we're going through the recontracting process. So we will be offering tools in the next year. And I'd like to just, again, invite you to take a look at it. We really are going to be able to provide you with some free support for this tech transfer mission within your order. So we're really thrilled about that. Sorry for those of you who aren't within the federal lab. We got to limit that to members. We can't make it available to everybody for free because it is a subscription. But we're really thrilled to be doing it. And I think it's a big help that it's something the FLC can really do for the tech transfer offices, for the orders themselves, to actually help them within their mission.
What an opportunity, too, to have it at people's disposal. So I hope people reach out, take you up on that. And finally, what is coming up that everyone should know about in the coming weeks?
So like I said, we've still been open for business. You can always go to our on-demand on the Learning Management Center. That's something that's available to everybody all the time. In fact, we've just actually put on some new courses. For example, technology readiness levels is one that we just launched. So it's something to check out. And, again, all the on-demand, all the national meeting things, it's, if you find yourself looking for something to do, it's all there online. However, we also we are keeping pace with our webinar programs. So I know that we're shut down. And again, anything, you can still go back to the Learning Center and pull out past webinars and all those types of things as well. But we're really super excited about on November 19th coming up. We are going to have the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office is going to talk to us about trademarks. In fact, they've agreed to do a 3-part series. So this is the first one of those from them. On trademarks, we're looking ahead. We'll be doing one on foreign filings and then one just really more on the internal patent process right from the source at USPTO. So those are things to come. But November 19th is actually going to be this one on trademarks. And then we're really thrilled to have Russell Levine come and talk to us about the top 10 court cases. And that one's going to be actually looking ahead to December 17th, but I would mark your calendar. And if you've never seen his presentation, he does just an awesome job. First, he's just a tremendous speaker that really knows his stuff and presents it super well. He's been gracious enough to do a session at our national meeting the last couple of years, which everyone really rates so highly. It's actually one of the highest rating, if not the highest rated session of our national meeting. And he can run right through and just talk about what's going on in the courts and how that affects our business. So mark your calendars for that if you haven't done that one before. Even if you have, it's always new. The courts are always processing things. And he's just such a great, knowledgeable speaker on that.
And I will underscore the point. These are free webinars and recordings available to anyone with an FLC account, which is also free and very easy to make. So open to anybody.
Indeed. We usually roll like that. Most of our stuff is free. We do have a few things that we've been paying for that we'll make available to members, but we're happy to do those things. But yeah, most of the offerings that we have, they are something that anybody can access, because this is as we say, tech transfers to contact sport. We got to get both the laboratory side and the partner side available in order to bring everybody together.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for all the information and your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in for this conversation and spreading the word about this podcast. Tell your friends and colleagues about the podcast and leave us a review and rating, because that helps other people find us. Subscribe and listen to more episodes on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Check the show notes or the episode page at federallabs.org for links to more resources and information that came up in our conversation. Thanks, as always, to our producer and digital marketing manager, Carly Dunnell, graphics manager, Danny Batchelor, web content and systems manager, Jess Klein, and the FLC staff and community for your support. We'll see you back in 2 weeks on Transfer Files Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in to the Transfer Files, your insider's look at federal tech transfer. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected for more episodes exploring how hundreds of government laboratories and countless industry partners are driving innovations that shape our lives.